So we just closed out 2022. We are kicking off a brand new year. What does the market look like here in Central Maine as we're headed into this late winter market? Stick around, we're going to get into that today. Hello Central Maine, welcome back to the channel. It is your realtor Nick Isgro with eXp Realty, and as I just stated at the beginning, we're kicking off January 2023 with a fresh market report. We have all of the crucial data that you need to know so we can do a little analysis to see where the market is headed as we're kicking off the year 2023 in the winter market. What does it look like? Where are we headed? Now, as always, as we get into some of this data, I want you to pay more attention to the trends than the actual numbers. Actual numbers are important, but when you're talking about a difference of 10 or 20, maybe active listings, is that a big deal? Is it not? What I want you to keep your eye on is always the trend line, because the trends are what actually tell the story, especially in a business where there's so much seasonality to it. What does it look like? Where have we been? Does this look normal? Does it look not normal? And does it give us any indication of where we're going? So I'm gonna hit all of the highlights that I think are the most important to help paint the full picture. Without any further ado, let's get right into it. All right, I wanna start here with new listings. So new listings, we had 64 new listings added to inventory in the month of December. And it is a little bit less than last year, but you can look at the trend line. This is definitely seasonal. You can see last December we were down in 80s, I think about 83 new listings last December, spiked up. You can see the progression upwards in the spring, peaking in the summer, back down through the fall, and a lower number of new listings coming onto the market in December. And actually, I did a little research. I went back into 2020 and we had only added about 69. So even going back 2 years, this is a very normal number for the month of December. So nothing to be surprised here. Very seasonal, very trend-worthy if we go back even 2 years, adding less than a month before, but obviously December, when we're coming from Thanksgiving headed towards Christmas, not a lot of people, unless it's really necessary, putting their homes on the market during that time, so no surprises there. The big numbers we're going to look at now are sales activity. Sales activity is where everything's happening right now. And the numbers we want to look at are pended listings and sold listings. Now, if you recall, the last few months we've had a lot fewer pended listings. That was the trend that started, and that has translated over the last couple of months into fewer sold listings than we have trended in the past. And this is what has been driving that upwards inventory number that we've been seeing when we look at longer market times, fewer sales, higher inventories. What's going on? We're gonna jump right in now with pended listings for the month of December, headed into January. Only 43 homes going into escrow during the month of December. Clearly, this is a big drop off. This is about half of the contracts that we put in the month before. But take a look at this graph. If you go back a year ago, we were putting over 100 homes into escrow during that same time period. If I go back 2 years, it was even more than that. Now, granted, that was COVID craziness. It's kind of hard to shake out where a lot of this is gonna go. But as far as where we've been trending, when we talk about the market shift, this is the shift we're talking about. Now, this does mean that as we get to the end of January, start analyzing January's numbers, unless there's a lot of quick financing or cash sales during the month of January, I'm expecting an actually lower number of sales for the month of January than I see coming out of December. Now let's hop right over to that. What were the sales in the month of December? Bringing it up right here, 89 sales during the month of December. So definitely, again, another drop off. Exactly what we expected, exactly what we predicted. If there's less homes going into escrow, there's going to be less closed sales. What's going to be interesting is that now that the holidays are over and now that rates are ticking back down, what happens during the month of January, during the month of February? Because right now, we're obviously trending into lower sales activity, which is increasing the active inventory we have in the market. We'll get into that number in a minute, but it's gonna be interesting because sometimes you can see great activity in January, February, sometimes not so much, but typically there can be an uptick after the holidays. And it's going to be interesting to watch how this shapes out over the next couple of months. And does that give us any predictions as to what's going to happen as we shape into the early spring market? Of course, only time will tell. We're going to continue to bring you the numbers right here on this channel. So what is going on with active inventory? We saw fewer new listings come into market, but as we saw also definitely within the seasonal trend that we expect, where the big drops were we're in pended sales and actual closed sales. That should result in a higher number of inventory, bringing it up here, 285 active listings, actually a little bit less than the month before. So take a look at this actual trend line, and this is going to have a big impact when we get to pricing. And this is why consistently we're going to keep telling you that unless there's a massive change here, we don't see a big difference going on in pricing, although there are some price reductions happening. We'll get to that in a little bit. But look at this trend line. We spiked in our inventory, but inventory over the last several months has been progressively coming down. So yes, homes are taking longer to sell. We're selling fewer homes per month, but we've also been adding fewer homes per month, and that is where we see this driving force in the inventory. And as long as inventory remains on the lower side, below 6 months of inventory, it's going to continue to remain by and large a seller's market, although as we're getting to here, definitely some negotiating room for buyers coming in, and that's going to lead us right in to the next piece of critical data, which is inventory. Now, as I always say here on this channel, inventory is the big driver of everything. So at the end of the day, if there's no inventory versus the demand, then you don't have a balanced market. So a balanced market, we would say, is about 6 months of inventory. Anything less than that, we would consider it still somewhat of a seller's market, although not where it was about a year ago. Anything more than that, we're going to call that a buyer's market, meaning buyers are going to have a higher negotiating leverage than the sellers because there's so much inventory on the market. Taking a look at the inventory here, as you can see, we finally peaked over 2 months of inventory on the market. Now, it has been a couple of years since we have seen that here in the central Maine market. In fact, most of the time for the last couple of years, we've had less than 1 month of inventory. You can see the trend line here. This was a big jump though, comparatively to the last couple of months. This was a big jump, going from just close to 1.5 months of supply to almost 2.25 months worth of supply on the market. Now, what does this mean? So what does the supply number mean? This is where we're seeing a lot of that negotiating room coming back for you buyers out there. This is where sellers are once again willing to put in some negotiations, willing to come to the table, maybe offer some closing costs or some concessions when it comes to the inspections or things like that. For a while that went away. Now we're back to what I would call a little bit more standard, a little bit more normal negotiating market comparatively to what we've seen over the last couple of years. All right, so what is driving higher inventories? Well, it's a couple of things, and it's going to be a combination of the fewer pended sales as well as the average days on market. So let's take a look at the average days on market and see if we can tie this all together for you here. So let's bring up that chart now. So average days on market here in Kennebec County is about 37 days, so over a month. On average here in the central Maine market, definitely longer market times, but it's important that we look at the trend line here, because this is where I say it's a combination of the longer time on market, but also fewer homes going into contract, fewer homes actually selling on a month-to-month scenario. Because if it was just days on market, that wouldn't do it. If we look back over the last year, you can see there were plenty of months where we were actually above this level. It was really last spring into the summer where we dipped way down on the average days on market, something where about 10 to 14 days in some places. But overall, we've seen this before, but we didn't have the increase in inventories at those times. Why? Because everything that was going on might have been taking a similar amount of time, but it was all selling. There were more buyers in the market. This is where we see the Fed increasing those interest rates, dampening, softening the market, which, by the way, was the intent of doing that. That policy has actually translated into a change in the market. Fewer sales, not necessarily longer time on market, but a little bit longer than we were used to over the last few months, I'd say the last 6 months. So this is going to be an interesting one for you, sale to list price ratio. And this is good for sellers and buyers for two different reasons. We'll get to that in a second, but just take a look at this graph as I bring it up. So sale to list price ratio, how much of the actual list price does the seller get in comparison to what they're asking for? The dark purple bar is the sale to list price ratio, meaning when it was finally listed, the day that it went under contract, how much of a percentage of the list price did the seller get? The light pink bar is actually an indicator of the original list price. The difference between the two is when there's price changes in the market. Now, as we can see over the past year, there's always been a little bit of a difference between the two. But what we didn't see is the kind of difference that we see now. Look at the gap between original list price and the final list price. So right now, as we're headed into January, sellers are getting about 98% of what they are asking for when it comes to the final list price that's in the MLS. Unfortunately, it's 94% of the original list price. So this means that there are price changes cooking into the market, and there's more of them because that gap has grown if we look at this chart. All right, so what does this mean for buyers and what does this mean for sellers? If you're a buyer, it means that you have negotiating room. It means that you should be willing now to go out and look at a house, and where a year ago you might not have dared to offer anything lower than asking price, be willing to offer a little bit lower than asking price because you probably have some room at the negotiating table. Now, if you're a seller, what does this mean? It means that you really want to price accurately. A year ago, last spring, if you were doing a market analysis, you would probably price a little bit ahead of where the market was going. Now you really want to make sure you're finding that sweet spot, working with your realtor, understanding where homes like yours are listed in the local market, what's moving, what's not, show some value to the buyers. That's going to get your home to sell faster than what we're seeing some of these other homes sell for, and also prevent you from doing a price drop at some point during your time on the market. All right, as always, I like to end with average sale price. People always want to know, what are homes selling for here in Kennebec County? What are the price trends? Boy, with all of this information, it seems like the trends must be going down. Not really. All right, so here it is, average sale price coming out of 2022, $317,000. The year before, $270,000. So the trend still has been upward, although if you look at this graph, you'll see there's been some ups and some downs, and things are really somewhat stable, which I think is the big takeaway here. All right, guys, so that is it. That's it in a nutshell. And this really describes the market shift that you keep hearing about. What is the market shift? Well, I can tell you here in Central Maine, it means there's fewer homes that are actually going under contract on a month-to-month basis. There's fewer homes that are selling on a month-to-month basis. Those fewer sales are indicating a higher level of inventory, which is putting a bit of pressure on the pricing, which means negotiation is coming back to the table between buyers and sellers. What's it doing to price? Not a ton. We are seeing some price reductions, although overall, inventories do remain low. They do remain squeezed because while there's less sales, there's actually fewer homes coming to market right now. So as we saw this last month, there was actually a slight dip in overall active listings, and that's going to keep the pressure to keep pricing fairly strong into the foreseeable future. Going to be very interesting what we see coming over the next several months as things start to heat up again now that we're past the holidays. All right, now if you are in the market, you've been in the market, what is your experience right now? What's going on the ground that you're experiencing? Whether you're a buyer or a seller, please go ahead, drop a comment below. Would love to hear from you. Also, if you're just a viewer out there and you have some predictions, drop those below. I always like to read those and engage with those. I find them very interesting and always like to read all of those. Now, if you're also in the market, you're thinking about getting into the market and you would like a little professional real estate guidance, go ahead and drop me a line. All of my contact information is linked in the post of this video. Feel free to reach out anytime. I promise you, I'll get back to you. Of course, as always, thanks to each and every one of you for sticking around to the end of this video. And until the next one, I'll see you next time.